we're giving away really all of our old materials or more materials. And so and that's giving us the opportunity to retool up for what might be a coming war with China or a proxy war with China. And if that's the case, that helps the entire defense industry and that war machine. And you want to be in front of that when that happens.
This is Brandon Turner, and you are listening to the Average Joe Finances Podcast.
Watching this on YouTube, make sure you smash the like and subscribe buttons. If you're listening to our podcast, go leave us a 5-star review. All of our links can be found in the video description or show notes below. Hey, welcome back to the Average Joe Finances Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Cavagioni, and today's guest is Elliot Kallen. So Elliot, super excited to have you on the show today. I really appreciate you taking the time on a Saturday to have a chat with me. This is awesome. So thank you so much.
Glad to be here, Mike. Thanks for having me.
All right. And I'm glad to have you. So, Elliot, I want to start this off the same way I start every podcast episode. And me and my audience would love to know more about you. So if you could share a little bit about yourself, share your story. Tell us, who is Elliot Kallen?
Great. Thanks for asking me, Mike. I am a CEO of 3 organizations here. My background is entrepreneurship. This is the 3rd, 4th, and 5th companies that I've started along the way. The other 2 I've sold. Lots of learning lessons. I wrote a book about it over my left shoulder called Driven, all about leadership and entrepreneurial and the permission to fail sometimes. Although, as we know, Mike, entrepreneurs never fail. They just have painful learning lessons. And so I did that. And now I've got an RIA, or a financial advisory business here in Northern California. It's national. At this point, it's a fee-only enterprise on that. And then I have a charity that deals with teenagers with stress and depression. It's amazing what we're doing every day, helping people retire, helping people understand pillars of life and money and behavioral finance. And believe it or not, behavioral finance is so underspoken about, and that is the emotions going into money and surrounding money. That's what behavioral finance is how do you feel about what you're doing? Because the average investor, and I know you've got a lot of people that invest in your show, very successful show, Mike. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And most people, unfortunately, in our country, they sell at the wrong time and they buy at the wrong time and they get scared. And you know what's funny? When a sweater goes on sale at Macy's and you need a sweater, you run right out and you buy it. When a stock goes on sale, what do? You sell it. It's the exact opposite. And so that's called behavioral finance. And we talk a lot about that. And it's a lot of fun. We've been doing this now 30 years in the business and manage between both companies a little bit shy of $1 billion.
Wow, fantastic, Elliot. That some background there. And I really appreciate everything you do too with running a charity. That's wonderful. So not only do you help people retire, but you're helping other people with some major problems that they're having in their life. That's fantastic. Now, Elliot, I'm really glad that you brought up behavioral finance, because I wrote this down as you were talking, because it's definitely something I like talking about, because I find that a lot of people, and myself included, when I really didn't know much better, do that exact thing. You'll see that sweater on sale and you'll go buy it on sale. But when that stock goes on sale, you're like, I need to get rid of it because it's going to keep going down, instead of buying it at that discounted price. That's the way I look at it now, but I didn't always look at it that way. And it took like a mindset shift for me to get to the point where I could realize, okay, just because a stock went down in value doesn't mean that I actually lost money. I lost value of that stock. I didn't lose any money. When I lost money, when I sell it, that's when I lost my money. So I got myself to the point of realizing, okay, look, stop saying that you're losing money when your stocks go down in prices. Because when it puts this trigger in your brain that it forces you to think that you really lost that money. You should sell before you lose more. But once you get past that, I feel like it helps you not want to sell right away. It makes you think about it a little bit more and say, okay, maybe I'm going to sit back and watch what happens here, but I'm going to pick up a couple more because I'm going to work on this dollar cost average. Is that something that you've seen a lot, or something that you talk to people a lot, is like trying to focus more on your dollar cost average versus focusing so much on what the price is today?
So behavioral finance, a good financial advisor has to be in the world of behavioral finance. They have to be. And another way of saying it is, can you manage your client expectations, the high lows, the bipolar, I love winning and I hate losing type of thing. Because look, all of us feel great. We have this euphoria and this dopamine rush when we're making money and we're doing well. And we have this fear of it going down to zero when there's a correction. We just do. My sister, and I tell the story about my sister way back in 1987 when President Reagan was in there. There was a monster correction made in October of 87, between 40 and 50% correction in one day. And it lasted for 90 days. All right. And so if you just hung in there, 3 months later, most of it had already come back. But she called her financial advisor in New Jersey and she said, sell everything, the market's going to zero. She locked in all those losses and then sued her advisor for not knowing this was coming.
Wow.
So that's a horrible client. You don't want that person as your client ever.
No.
And I wouldn't take her either. But that's how too many people think. Look, the market has always gone up almost every 10-year decade, rolling 10 years in history. Look, we had the 1930s, we had the 1970s. Okay, there's 40 years between them. Could it go down? Of course it goes down. There's a war in the Mideast. There could be an expanding war in the Far East, and some really negative things can happen. But there's still winners. I can tell you that right now, we're looking heavily at U.S. defense contractors and how we can capitalize on what's happening in the most negative part of the world, the Middle East or maybe the Far East, because those are going to be the winners right now. And then you've got AI that's all part of that and things like that. There are always winners, and our job and some of your clients' listeners' job is to look for winners, right? And stop always swinging for the fences. And we tell people, keep swinging the bat. You're going to get more singles than doubles, more doubles than triples, and hopefully more home runs definitely more home runs than triples statistically. But if you just keep swinging for the home run, you're going to strike out almost every time up. So swing the bat.
That's a great way. That's a great analogy for that, right? Just keep swinging and stop trying to get the home run with every swing. Just hit the ball. Just focus on hitting the ball. Absolutely love that.
Mike, we all look at some of these people that have amazing success out there. We look at Amazon and we look at Google and we look at Jeff Bezos and what a monster he's become in the world of finance. And then you look at Facebook or Meta today and you say, there's been a great run of an entrepreneur from college to billionaire. I could do that too. Why can't everybody do that? And unfortunately, that's not the reality of life. And most people have struggles and they have ups and downs and cash flow and marriage and divorce and illness, and it changes. And if you accept that and do the best with it, and I know as a former Navy SEAL, one of the things that is so impressive that you've talked about, and you just told me off air, is understanding and working with what you're in control of and not in control of, and making the best of both. But if you
you're talking about we were talking about Jocko Willink's Extreme Ownership. Yeah, that's definitely a must read for anybody that's in any type of entrepreneurial position or just looking to make better choices in their life. Definitely a book that I feel like has changed me and changed my mentality for sure. So yeah, definitely awesome. So Elliot, as we're talking about this just behavioral finance, right? What are some things or some characteristics that you've seen of people when it comes to their mindset when they first sit down to talk with you versus after being one of your clients for a couple of years? Like, what do you see any changes in people when it comes to how they feel about their investments?
Mike, that's a great question. So the key word in my industry is trust. Can you trust the person you're speaking with? Because it comes down to that. If you don't trust them, if I make you 40% this year, Mike, on your money, an enormous amount of money, but you don't trust me, you're still going to leave me. And if I make you 2%, the market goes to as a zero, I make you 2. That's better than the zero that's going on. But you trust me, you're going to hang in there because you know I'm doing my job. I'm working on it. I'm getting you better than the index return, if that's our goal, or better than bond, whatever our goal is. It's not all indexes, whatever our goal. So trust is the key word. And the driver against trust, the opposite of trust is fear. that you're going to take my money and you're going to run away with it. You're going to become the next scam on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, whatever it is, the Bernie Madoff. And that's what scares people, is they know that in their heart, IBM is a company that makes a lot of money, but then they were terrible for a bunch of years because they didn't get it right. It wasn't that long ago that the front cover of Time magazine ran a headline page, the end of Big Blue. It was the end of IBM. None of that proved to be true. And so if you watch the news every day, finance news, business news, world news, political news, you are going to live in a world of fear, because fear sells news articles and newspapers. And so all those things around you that are drivers in your life are trying to scare you into making decisions. In the world of finance, that is your enemy, because that makes you get scared very quickly. So tomorrow, Google and Microsoft go down by 20%. Does that mean they're suddenly bad companies? No one needs their products anymore. No one's going into AI. No one's going to do searches anymore using their products. No one's going to write using Word any longer. They're going to go to some other product. None of that is just true. I just told you. But they live in a world of fear. And that's the enemy, is fear.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's always fear of the unknown when you go into something like this, but there's always risk, right? But as long as you can find an acceptable risk that you're comfortable with, but again, not letting fear take over, then you can put yourself in a point where, okay, you understand, or at least for me, like one of the things I've learned, and over time, I began to understand that I'm not trying to take this money back right now. My intention is to buy and hold, right? And not buy and sell when things are looking grim, right? It's buy and hold until I'm ready to cash out and fully 100% retire. And even then, I probably wouldn't even do that. I'd probably shift everything over to REITs and other dividend paying stocks and just live off of the dividends. But at the same time, again, I feel like that's a very common thing that you see. And you had mentioned what happened in 87, but also when the housing market crashed in 2008, the stock market also followed. And I know a lot of people that sold and sold, but I have a friend of mine who said, I'm just going to stay. I'm going to leave everything as it is. And 10 years later, actually less than that, I think it was in 2015, his money that he hadn't done anything with, he tripled everything. He just left it alone. And then he was able to retire as a millionaire. When people are running away and running for the hills, that's when you should be running in, right? Warren Buffett says that too. When others are fearful, it's time to be greedy. But yeah, it's true, Elliot, when you look at just human behavior in general. So I like the fact that you look at the psychological aspect of this as well. Most financial advisors don't do that. They're focused on, okay, here's our product. We want you to get into this, and that's it. But you're saying, hey, look, let's take a step back and take a look at the bigger picture here. And I really appreciate the fact that you do that for your clients. That's actually a very noble and good thing, which means you actually care and are taking care of them. And I think that's important. Now, okay, one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about and ask you about, because when we talk about how so many people are fearful altogether, a lot of times, like these different message boards, I read stuff on Reddit all the time where one person will say something and then other people jump in, and you get like this huge just groupthink, and everyone's going down that same rabbit hole instead of somebody stepping outside of the box and saying, okay, this isn't the right way to go. How do you get around that? Like when you find yourself in a group and everybody's like running around like lemmings, not knowing what they're talking about, and everyone else is just following that one person that said something silly. Like how do you get around something like that?
It's a great question, because you are in a world of behavioral finance. And your comment about Warren Buffett actually goes way back to the Rothschild Empire in Europe. The first family of investment bankers was always buy when the streets are running red, was the phrase that they used, which means when everybody's selling is when you want to buy. And what they did, and then where that story came from, is they were actually taking bets on who would win at the Battle of Waterloo. And that's what they did. Napoleon, would the British win, would the French win? And they sent spies out to the battle and realized that Napoleon was going to win. Napoleon was going to lose that day. It was going to be the end of Napoleon. So they came back and began to spread rumors that Napoleon was winning the battle. And they took the other side of that trade, which was the accurate side. So that's where they came from.
The original insider trading.
Definitely like that. But we got to talk about, you mentioned REITs earlier. One of the most successful real estate companies in the world is Blackstone. Mm-hmm. They are very successful. And what they did in 2008 is they saw, and granted they were privately funded then, they saw that mess happening when real estate was a debacle and there were foreclosures everywhere and things dropped by 30 to 50% overnight. And what did they do? They went into America's largest cities that were underwater, Phoenix and Miami and Atlanta, and they went and bought all that real estate. And today they're the largest real estate holder in the world, and they're doing all these rental properties because they bought them all in 2008 when everybody was selling. So that's a smart move. Being able to finance,
they got them all at a discount.
They got them at a gigantic. We look what's happened since 2008. What are they, quadrupled on that stuff? Yeah. So the key is to not be in groupthink. And you mentioned groupthink, lemons and groupthink. The newspapers love that. They just love that. Listen again to the gold commercials, and you will be scared to death. Listen again to the food commercials for pre-hydrated food for when the world comes to an end with 2,000 calories a day. You'll be scared to death in buying more gold. If you're not sure what to do, you'll buy Bitcoin because I don't know what to do, but Bitcoin and gold is where I want to be, or silver or platinum, or they make terrible. I'm not saying Bitcoin's a bad investment, but certainly commodities can be terrible investments, hard assets like that. You got to think beyond that. And then what are some good companies that will do well? The stock market, the bond market's about to have a rally starting probably next year. And it will probably have a once in a 5 or 10 year rally then 2024, starting in the second quarter. If people are scared, that's a great place to be because they're going to make 8 to 10% in bonds, which is a great place if that's your risk profile. But take the right amount of risk. And here's a good question about risk, a good statement. How do I know if I'm taking the right amount of risk? If you can't sleep at night, you're taking too much risk.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
If you can sleep through it, like you're talking about, you want to buy and hold, and I would recommend you be a little bit more tactical than that because not everything is a buy and hold product. But if you can strategize and be tactical at the same time, then you will always be looking for opportunities, and you won't be dumping just for the sake of dumping unless suddenly the technology is gone, and then you're being tactical again and saying, I loved ABC, now I'm going to GHI because they've got newer technology that I think is a winner.
Yeah, and that's the due diligence that you as the investor need to do. You need to, if you're going to invest in something, it should be something that you believe in and you believe in what they're doing and that it's actually going to keep moving upward and forward, right? If you decided to say, hey, when Google was up and coming and got into that and they said, hey, I was on Yahoo, but now I'm moving over to Google because you saw that opportunity, right? You didn't know that Yahoo was going to, you probably thought that Yahoo was going to completely go away. You didn't know that they were going to still be around. They're still around, right? So you probably could have still stayed in there a little bit and then continued that opportunity in Google. But there's little things like that where somebody might decide to jump ship, and you didn't necessarily have to jump ship. You could just move some of your assets over, right? You don't have to jump ship on something and move completely from one thing to another. Like me in particular, like I bought Apple and I hold it and I've never sold it. I just hold Apple. It's one of those, I feel like Apple's here to stay for a very long time. And I feel very comfortable with that. Now I did another one too that I bought and I was holding on to because I thought they're going to do great. And I'm still holding it because I refuse to sell it and lose all that money. But I bought Lucid. I bought Lucid when it was $22 a share and it's down to $4 a share.
Well, you might be riding that at the bankruptcy court at the end of the day. Lucid, I have a good friend of mine that works for Lucid and they're in panic mode right now. Yeah. It's a $250,000 car. It's a really cool looking car.
It is.
They thought the electric world would just take off. It hasn't taken off like we think. If you took away the tax benefits of it, it wouldn't take off at all. You and I as consumers are not really buying outside of Tesla many electric cars, and even Tesla loses money on every car, but they got a tax break on every car, and that makes a big difference.
Yeah. So I have a Tesla. I love it. So it's a really neat and fun car to drive, but yeah. Okay. So anyway, I'll get past all that. So What would you say are some of the most common mistakes that you've seen people make when it comes to just trying to gain wealth and just stay the course, right? And just stay focused on their financial goals. What are some of those roadblocks get in the way for those folks?
So remember that pigs get fed and hogs get slaughtered. That's really the problem with money. If we're going to build money, understand your time frame is 10 years, 20 years. You're talking about REITs. REITs are a terrible product to own today. But conversely, they're a great product to buy today if you have 20 or 30 years, because that's what REITs are. Just commercial properties about to get beaten up pretty badly in the United States next year. We'll see if that sneezes and goes over to the personal rent and residential real estate market. But there's no doubt about it, there's a problem in that market. And that problem is when you buy. So think strategic, but buy tactical. And that's what we try to teach people to do. That we don't buy and hold, we buy and think what we're doing, because maybe that's a good place to be. And I'll give you another small idea. You think small cap companies, what we call small companies, are the place to own stocks. Somebody make a case for it. Typically, when we come out of a recession, small companies do the very best. They're the ones that lead the charge. When you're in a recession, you want to own large companies because they're the ones that are able to have the cash flow to sustain themselves during that period. So the question that would come up now, if you're a surgical person, or strategic person, are we going to have a fourth quarter recession in 2021, 22, 23, 24? They've been talking about it now. We're going to our fourth year of talking about a fourth quarter recession. Or are we really in such slow growth that maybe this is really the recession?
And yeah, I like that you bring that up, because I was talking to somebody else about this pretty recently, and just looking at how slow things have been and how inflation has been, it's like, are we not in a recession right now? That's the question that I'm asking myself quite often. And we're waiting for this crash. We're waiting for this big market shift, right? I feel like it's been shifting this entire time. It's just been this slow moving at a snail's pace shift that we've had. But I think everybody's expecting us to just fall off the cliff, right? And I don't think that's happened. I think we're just on this downhill ride. We're just on this slope, gradually going, and then it's coming back up, and then we're gradually going down again. But also at the same time, like if you're paying attention to what's happening, yeah, we've had a couple dips, and for a long period of time, this gradual going down. But when you see it start to recover and come back up, it's the same thing. It's going up, it's going down a little bit, it's going up. And you just see that if you're paying attention to it, that's what it does every 10 years, like you talked about before, like every market cycle, right? And the real estate market does it too. That's one of the things I pay attention to a lot because I'm a real estate investor. But real estate, every single area and every single market is different. I'm looking at areas where the values of homes drop significantly. And then I look at where I live out here in Hawaii, where the market has stayed pretty steady and has gone up. So again, it's all about where you're investing when it comes to real estate. Now, that's why I'll refer to you or defer to you when it comes to investing in the stock market. Like, what are your thoughts on where we're at today? Because I think you're seeing the same thing that I'm seeing and talking about as well. Do you think we're in a recession right now, or do you think it's still coming?
So I tend to be a bullish, optimistic person in general, Mike. I'm not a bear or a perma bear, or some of these really negative people for life are. That's the phrase that we use for people that are always talking about recession. By the way, if I talk about a recession every year, sooner or later, I'm going to be right. So no, I believe we've been in a malaise and a slowdown. And this is how I look at it. Let's put politics aside, that you love the current president or not, because that really is irrelevant here. We're definitely in a malaise. Nobody's feeling really good about what's coming out of Washington, D.C. Nobody's feeling really good about what the Federal Reserve is talking about with interest rates going up. Nobody's really feeling good about mortgages right now with 7 and 8%, and still probably got a quarter point to go, one more increase. Nobody's feeling good about the price of gas. Nobody's feeling good about the pressure with nobody wanting to buy a house these days. There's just such malaise out there. So to me, that's a buying opportunity, not a selling opportunity. So now what's not doing well that we can capitalize on? And that's why I started the show off, Mike, talking about the defense industry, because the defense industry, which is a high dividend paying industry, thrives in these times. Fast food thrives in these times. Why? Because money's a little bit tight. Everything's more expensive. It's easier to feed your family Pizza Hut and McDonald's and so forth than it is to go to an expensive restaurant. We know that we're running out. Whether you like the war in Ukraine or you hate it, that we're helping them or not helping them and so forth, we're giving away really all of our old materials or war materials. And so and that's giving us the opportunity to retool up for what might be a coming war with China or a proxy war with China. And if that's the case, that helps the entire defense industry and that war machine. And you want to be in front of that when that happens. And so we look at, that's what I mean, Mike, by being tactical. Because why would you buy the war machine 10 years ago? There wasn't much happening. But today, that's a great place to buy. Why would you always want to buy artificial intelligence now or technology? Why? Because they do better now in all types of markets. And there's so many amazing things happening. And I like cybersecurity as a particular subsector of the technology market. Why? Because the world's getting more unsafe. But I do believe we're in a malaise. In industry jargon, we call that a trading range, that you're going to make from 2 to 10% this year, 2 to 8% this year, depending on what you're in. You could also drop 15% because you're not paying attention. All right. But we think you're going to finish year 2 at 10. Now, U.S. Treasuries are paying you more for the first time in over a decade. You can make more money by taking no risk. But that's a phenomenon that will go away at some point.
Yep.
And probably go away by next year. Yes, you could have bought more treasuries. I've sold more U.S. Treasury bills this year than my other 29 years combined in the industry. But probably by mid next year, we won't even be having this conversation. That's what I mean by tactical versus surgical. You're an ex-Navy guy, and thank you for your service. I'm going to tell you that the Navy looks at things strategically. These are the boats we need. These are the armaments we need. This is the new carrier we need. But maybe those don't work if we go to war with China, because they worked great for the last 50 years, or 70 years since World War II with carriers. Now, things have changed, and that's what I mean by being tactical. Are we going to be in front of it, or are we going to get our head blown off to figure out we should have been in front of it? And investing is the exact same way. Be in front of your trend, because it is better to be a little bit early than way late.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it is definitely better to be a little bit early than way late. That is a great way. And a great segue into what I'd like to do now, Elliot, is I'd like to transition this into something that I call the final round. It's where I'm going to ask you the same 4 questions I ask everybody that comes on the show, and helps give us a better idea of how you are under a little bit of pressure, which I think you're going to be fine. But that last thing that you just mentioned is a great segue into what this first question is going to be. So if you're ready to go, we'll get that party started.
Let's do it.
All right. So Elliot, based off of what you just said, this works out pretty good. So I'm going to ask you, what is the biggest mistake that you've ever made when it comes to your finance or business life?
That's a great question, because it haunts me still. So this is the third, fourth, and fifth companies that I've started now. I think what I made a mistake on, and being young and naive, my 20s and 30s, is not understanding that cash flow is your shortage of constant cash flow and new money coming in. Because in my first company that I started, we were growing at 30-40% a year, and I kept running out of money. And instead of hiring a money guy, which is what I should have done to help me, even though I came from an accounting background, I really was not a CFO type of person. Instead of hiring that person, I did that person and hired a sales manager instead, which is what my strength is, the people strength. So I hired to my strength, and I took on my weakness. Exact opposite of what everybody should do is you bring in people to cover your weakness, and you capitalize on your strength. I did the opposite.
Yep.
And I would never do that again. So to all those people that have started companies or thinking about starting companies out there, understand that cash flow is king in your early phases, because you are going to run out of money. I didn't understand it. How can I possibly run out of money? And before I blinked an eye, I was $500,000 in debt in my company, and I paid it off. But it was so painful. And I think there was a good 2 years that I didn't sleep.
Yeah, that's a very important thing when you talk about the who, not how. So I think that's great. As a matter of fact, it's funny that you mentioned everything about cash flow too, because we do out here, I have a monthly meetup, and the last 3 meetups, what we've done is we play the cash flow game. the Robert Kiyosaki cash flow game. And it's really fun when we have folks out there and good lessons learned about how they escape the rat race, right? But the biggest focus is raising that cash flow, right? You got to get that cash flow up to get to the point where you can go do those other things. And I think that also reflects on the business side as well. I definitely appreciate that answer. Now, Elliot, this next question ties into the last one. And that is, what is something that you've learned that you wish you knew when you first started out?
I wish I learned patience, because in a world of building a business and investing, patience is your friend. And something in your personal relationship with your children, with your spouse, your significant other, your part, whatever, patience is also your friend on that. And all of us have grown up in a world. I don't care what your generation is. I'm a few years older than you, but we've all grown up in a world that says, what's in it for me? What about me? Don't I have a right to be happy? Don't I have a right to be richer? Don't I have a right to be wealthier? Don't I have a life for more hair? Don't I have a right to be better looking? All those things. That's not a shoe fit question, by the way. But you have a right to that. And the problem with that is that it makes the center of the universe ourselves. And so somebody once told me, in a relationship, and investing is the same way. If every day you wake up, Mike, and you think of how I can make my partner's life a little bit better today, or say the right thing, or buy a flower, or just leave a card, or just say I love you, or just give him a hug, give her a hug, whatever it is. If you could do that every day, and they could do that back every day to you, imagine how you'd feel about good your relationship, your children, and so forth. And in investing, it's the same way. If you're going to do that with your money, what can I do today that will improve my life a little bit more for tomorrow? Not a lot more, not a million times more, just today. Because you get to first base just as easily as hitting a single into the gap as you do on a bunt. You're still on first base. So that little bit gets you there.
No, Elliot, I absolutely love that. And I have fellow real estate investor friends that came on the podcast, and one of the things that they talked about, and I love this, and it's one of the things I try to focus on too, is just try to be 1% better. Try to get 1% better every single day. And before you know it, when 100 days pass, you realize you are 100% better than you were 100 days ago. So I like what you're talking about with, okay, with your investing, what can I focus on right now in my investing to make tomorrow better? And I think that's a great way to look at it. Stop living for today. Maybe that's not the right way to put it, because you do want to live for today, but stop living. Today is going to be, you should live like today's going to be the first day of the rest of your life. So what are you going to do to make the rest of your life better? I think that's the right way I wanted to put it.
There was a TV show that was done, or a news program that was done, on the people who died in the World Trade Center in 2001, on what they interviewed the spouses and partners of people who had died, and said, can you remember the last conversation you had that morning or the night before they went to work the next morning, because they're dead. That's also your last conversation. And they interviewed hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands of people who died, of their spouses. And they talked about, we argued over the laundry. We argued over, are you going to get the kids today or am I? What's the deal? We said, I love you, the nice things. We were talking about planning our vacation. But at least 50% of the people there said the conversation they had was just worthless and negative. And then half the people said it was positive. Can you imagine every single one of those people that had that negative conversation? If they could have done it all over again, they would have done it and said something nice. I'm going to end my life, if I know that's going to happen, with something nice. And that's how you go through life, Mike. And that's how you go through business. My day today can be a little bit better than yesterday. Can be a little bit better tomorrow. I'm not going to live just for tomorrow. You're right. Be in this moment, because they say living for tomorrow, only for tomorrow, can be a fool's errand. You don't want that, because you need to have your successes and enjoy them. But
that's why I was trying to make sure I worded that correctly, because it was
But you want to live and I know you have kids and I have kids, and if you're not thinking about how to be optimistic and live better for tomorrow, what are you doing here?
Absolutely. No, I love that, Elliot. My focus is I want to make sure I build a legacy for my family and for my children and my future grandchildren. Okay, absolutely love that answer. That's why I added on to it. But the next question of the final round is, do you have, Elliot, any tips or tricks that you would recommend to someone that is just getting started out today?
Okay, so that's a great question. There are two types of people and two types of roads for investors. And I'm assuming you're talking about the world of investing in that question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so two types of people. One is I'm going to do it myself. And that's not necessarily the right way to do it, but do it yourself. That means do some research. Look at what's going on. Look around you. There was a great money manager, Peter Lynch of Fidelity in the 1970s. That was the most successful manager in that decade. And that was a decade of malaise. We finished that decade lower than when we started. One of the very few decades, 70s and the 30s were like that. But he managed to make a consistent 10% per year over a decade return when everybody was negative that year, right? And he did it by looking around and talking to his kids. What do you like? He was the largest owner of McDonald's in the 1970s. Who heard of McDonald's in the 1970s? But his kids loved that they could get their food in less than 5 minutes, and it was easy. And then Domino's Pizza was the same thing for him, and eventually who bought Domino's and Kentucky Fried Chicken, all these big companies. And then you look around at what is doing well with your eyes wide open, and those investments are right in front of you every day. And then if that's one person. The second person can still have the trace of the first person that says, let me find somebody that I truly trust. And until I don't trust them anymore, because that happens too, let me find somebody I truly trust, I truly want to invest with, and let me consistently every month invest in all markets. And over time, and that's the beauty of a 401k, over time, you will make a ton of money if you just put blinders on and keep investing in the right place and know that somebody has your back.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love that, Elliot. That's wonderful. And it is important. Relationships are a very important piece of this as you're moving forward and focusing on investing the right way. I have this podcast called Average Joe Finances, and I invest in real estate. I also invest in the stock market. I also have my TSP, which is like a 401k. And the thing is, even with all that, I still have a financial advisor. I'll be the first one to tell you that I have a financial advisor that I use. And I think that's important, right? Because a lot of times when it comes to your own money, even if you don't want to be, even if you shifted your mindset, you're going to attach some emotion to it. So that's why I feel like it's always good that I have somebody that has my back and making sure that I'm staying in my swim lanes where I need to be at, and I'm not veering off into someone else's and getting disqualified. I think that's important, that you have the right team and you have people that have your back. And I think that relationship piece is a very huge part of that. It's the same thing in real estate. I don't invest in real estate by myself. I invest with different teams. I have partners, right? I think that's huge. So I really like the fact that you bring that point up, Elliot. It's who do you have in your corner, right? Who do you have on your team that's helping you be successful in life, right? Okay. Anyway, Elliot, the final question of the final round is, and I will preface this with besides your own, but do you have a favorite business, investing, or real estate related book or podcast or both?
We have a podcast too. So can I tout my own horn for a moment?
We'll get to that. That's why I said besides your own. We're going to get to yours in a second.
We have a podcast also. But I have a book I'm just reading right now called Merger and Arbitrage. Right now, literally, it's just fortuitously on my desk right now. That's a business book. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill is a good idea about investing. That's probably the granddaddy of all of them, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. This is on how to make money when the markets are contracting. So markets change, somebody's going to get bought out. You mentioned Yahoo. How do I get on a company that's going to get bought out? There's a lot more money being on the side of being purchased than on the side of being the purchaser. And so you want to be on a company that's going to get sold on one side and then get out. You don't need to stay in there once that matters. And that's what I mean by being tactical on that. Think and Grow Rich, the beauty of that was understanding that money multiplies itself over and compounds if you do the right thing. And same thing, no money down in real estate. That came out for a while. That didn't really work long term. But what does come out in real estate is if I can buy 3 properties, then maybe I can work them and buy a 4th. If I could buy a 4th, and maybe I could buy a 5th. And by the time I retire, I've got 35 of these properties. Same thing in every market. Let your success compound into more success.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's why compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world, right? It's a thing of beauty. So Elliot, that is it for the final round. You pat yourself on the back. You made it through. I told you, I knew you would, and I knew you were going to crush it, and you did. Now, however, with that being said, I do have another question for you. And this is going to be the most important question I'm going to ask you throughout this entire interview, right? Because we had this wonderful conversation. We talked about behavioral finance, right? And mindsets and just how you focus on making the right decisions, the right financial decisions, right? And there's people that are listening right now that say, you know what, I want to learn more about Elliot. I know he's got a book that he wrote. I know he's got a podcast as well. So if you could share with us, where can people find more information about you? You have a website. Where can we find your podcast? Where can we find your book? And do you have any social media profiles that we could check out and follow?
We do, and we're on Facebook, Instagram, so definitely could do that. So it's www.prosperityfinancialgroup.com. It's Elliot, ELLIOT, at prosperityfinancialgroup.com. We're on Facebook, Prosperity Financial Group. I'm on Facebook personally. You can friend me. I'm not on Twitter. That's one thing I'm not on right now, but I am everywhere else that you can imagine.
I don't think anyone's on Twitter anymore. Now we're all on X.
Thanks. But you can ask for help at any time, and check out the podcasts are called Meet the Expert with Elliot Kallen. The book is driven by Elliot Kallen. I love writing. I love talking to people like you, Mike. When you like people, this is easy. When you hate people, it doesn't work. I have a business partner I just bought out. He liked animals more than people. He went to work every day and cringed and fought it because he much preferred to be with dogs and horses and cows. But this is a fun job, what you're doing, what I'm doing, because when you like people and you truly want to help people, man, you're willing to go the extra mile all the time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I enjoy being able to get a good message out there that's if it's going to help somebody, then to me, I feel like I did my part. So Elliot, seriously, thank you so much again for taking your time on a Saturday to come out and talk with me. For those links for your website and your podcast and your social media, we'll make sure we have all of that in the show notes for our listeners. And for my listeners, you guys know the drill. If you're listening and you want to go check out any of those websites, please don't do it while you're driving. Make sure you get yourself to a good spot where you get to work or wherever you're going to get to, and then you can go check them out. But hey, Elliot, again, thank you so much, man. This was fantastic. And you definitely are an expert in the field. And I had a great time and a great conversation with you.
Mike, it's been my pleasure. Congratulations on all your success.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And congratulations on all your success as well. And also to all my listeners, I want to thank all of you so very much for joining me and our special guest, Elliot Kallen, on the Average Joe Finances podcast. If you liked what you heard with Elliot today, go leave us a 5-star review and tell us what you liked about it. Aloha from Hawaii, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you for making it to the end of this episode. Greatly appreciate you being here with me today on the Average Joe Finances podcast. If you haven't done so yet, make this the episode that you go leave us a 5-star rating or subscribe to our YouTube channel. The Average Joe Finances podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. Have an outstanding day.